thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much, Danny, for the fantastic invitation and introduction. And the only way I have made anything successful is by collaborating with other people. So this is a bit of a different talk, and I wish that all of these fantastic people would come and consult with me on doing some organizational change. And this is really a call to action, a collaboration with all of you. Because what I want to do is just share some stories and have you reflect on your workplace, your work practice, your collaboration as a designer, developer, engineer, creating new experiences for people, and then sort of think about what are some of the ways in which we do not just tool design, but also organization and communication design. And I'm going to end with some stuff I'm just thinking about right now. So it's a bit freeform, and I hope that I'll get to talk to some of you later or maybe online. So anyway, this talk was written by generative AI. How many of you believe? I'm just kidding. But there were some bits here that I sort of played around with a whole load of AI tools that are coming out with developers in mind to start to see where the scope is for their potential utility, but also some pitfalls. And so what do I do? Well, Danny gave you a little bit of a scene, but I do what I call consumer-grade tooling with research, designers and developers, researchers and designers and developers, using that research and design process iteratively and working with developers to think about what consumer-grade tooling would be. And of course, when I say consumer-grade, what I mean is what many of you work on, which is to get things in people's hands, whether they're sort of discretionary apps or productivity apps and experiences, desktop, mobile, whatever, to help people get their life tasks done, enjoy themselves, etc. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about our consumers, our users, and use cases, and very little real research and investment has been made on design and development tools until the last few years, really. The other thing I like to think about this is whenever I get a job within Google or wherever, I feel like I'm sort of lying a little bit, because I say consumer-grade tooling for effective, productive, efficient teams. And my VPs all go, yep, I can buy into that. But what I'm actually usually doing is talking around the production of the tools and how those tools lead to effective production, which is actually very much like Kate's points about creating the sort of environment within which people can be productive, which of course is communication design, collaboration design, organization design. But if I said that to most of my VPs, they'd be like, you're boiling the ocean, and that is somebody else's job, not yours. But I think everybody knows that when we design something for use, we are thinking about the context of use. We are thinking about whether that thing is accessible, in the biggest sense of the word accessible, to the people that we're designing for. We're thinking about what comes with that thing that we've designed, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So designers and developers are users too, I say. And user experience, classical definition, encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, even when it's your own, its services and its products. So this very much is in that service design model, but one doesn't necessarily talk about it or sell it that way. One sneaks in lessons that changes, that creates change in the way something is taken up and used, and who has ownership of making that thing, making that process efficient and effective. And that's the sort of joint collaborative ownership that I always work towards whenever I'm kind of creating teams. So I've been at Google a while, and I've worked in 3 different areas. Flutter, which is a UI framework, where with someone called Tao Dong, I set up research that still is going. And that is an open source. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of designers and developers externally use Flutter. And so we had a particular way of thinking about how research and design came together to design the marketing of Flutter, to design the documentation, to design the APIs, and to really sort of think about how Flutter as a product and an experience and a service is adopted and adapted. And that took quite a lot of internal redesign. And luckily, I worked with extremely good PMs, product managers, and leadership to get that data taken up. We just heard about how hard it is for some people to understand data, but using some of the tools and techniques that have been talked about today to bring people alive, to bring the user alive, to develop that sense of empathy, and to also say, and if you don't, we will not have a market. And to show where, when we'd implemented something, maybe an API redesign, we got good feedback. And making that really a flywheel of sort of information coming out as fast as possible. The second was material design. And I worked with material design, Google's design system, for quite a long time. And there instituted this idea that great designed components can be made even more effective and efficient if we do some research on them and their effectiveness. And that was a slow persuasion again. And what we ended up realizing was a lot of the designers that were being sort of coming on board with material, external to Google as well as internal, are hybrid designers and developers. And they wanted to work with us to think about how that movement from the design into the development, into production, could be facilitated. Finally, Fuchsia is what I'm working on now. Fuchsia is a next generation operating system. And we are a team of about 400 engineers, software engineers, plus about 50 designers, UX engineers, content strategists, operations folks, et cetera, et cetera. And we work with the developers of Fuchsia. So the data I'm going to share with you are from multiple different surveys and so forth. So I've generalized a little bit. But here we have people estimating their own time, as well as us doing some log studies to see how much time people are spending on creative and strategic tasks, and how much time they're spending on other tasks, which I'll talk about in a second. And I would argue, as per some of the conversations today, you do need time to be creative. And if you're not having time, it's very hard to be creative. Maybe it's the going for a walk. Maybe it's the sitting and chewing the cud with someone else. But you do need time. And we have a lot of data to suggest that people feel they don't. Designers and developers, they don't have enough time. So what are the key activities? What do they like doing? They like problem solving and designing. And I mean designed architectures, designing the system. They love generating code. It can be a little arduous at times, but that problem solving is a high. Learning and discovery is a high. Essential time sinks are code review. Everybody knows code review is really important. Writing documentation. Writing tests, end-to-end testing. We know it's important. Debugging and testing. And some of the things that Kate mentioned, one of the things that we've done is design the organization to have awards for people who do these things. So that's organization design. So even though it seems tedious, it might actually end up being something where you see yourself doing really great work. The really tedious stuff is wrangling infrastructure. And I'll talk about more of that in a second. Poorly designed interfaces. That's a call to action to all of us to think about the interfaces we use and to bring our skills to think about how we can improve those. Estimating timeframes. The developers we've talked to over the years hate that. They hate that. The other time sinks that I wanted to share with you, which I thought was organization design, communication design, implementing unnecessary features. And unnecessary often turns out to be nobody told me why this is important. Is it important? I don't even know. Maybe we can use one of the methods we just heard about to figure that out. Working with other people's code. How does everybody feel about that? Everybody who's a coder, how do you feel about that? Other people's code? Awesome. Yeah. Naming things. People don't like naming things. This is where content strategy comes in. I have a bunch of content strategists who try to make this fun. Dealing with people. Right up there, dealing with people. Arguably, it's the ways in which we have to deal with each other that are the problem, not the actually dealing with people, and the other pressures. Explaining what I do. Anyone, does that resonate? What do you do anyway? Design to engineering handover. Sounding familiar? Danny was just talking about that. So this is about creating the situations within which those things are easier, better, and time is made for them to be creative together, not just throw things across the wall, not just have something shoved at you. So that really is organization design. Now, here are some of the things. You don't have to read them all, but here are some of the other things that come up, which really are organizational and infrastructural, which are things that are impeding that creativity time spot. There's lack of resources and project staffing. Now, these are the kinds of things that I will gently bring up to my VP when certain decisions are being made about resourcing. Product complexity. And I will talk about how the UX team, the content strategy team, the tech writing team really are there to help with product complexity. We do a lot of work which is about mental model, discussions, mapping. We heard about mapping earlier. Getting people to do napkin sketches of how do you think this actually infrastructure works? And then getting them to talk to each other and see that they're on different sides of the same coin, really. And they're talking about the same things, but with different language, the same words that mean different things. Product health, bugs and performance issues, and tech debt. One of the things we've done in my team is to have a whole program of work where tech debt, which is seen as not the sexy work, actually is where our newsletters talk about people who have managed to take tech debt down. We have awards. We valorize people who do the tech debt and the maintenance work, not just what is considered innovation. Because actually maintenance to create an infrastructure that is robust and reliable is innovation. Because that's what's going to create something sustainable. So we really try to turn on its head this idea that innovation is just something novel. We start to say robust infrastructure may be novel. Do we want everyone to have something that breaks in persistent beta forever or not? So the tech infrastructure with poor integration, I'm sure everyone in this room has experienced that, and terrible interfaces and the sort of lack of documentation and support are things that eat up that time when we could be being creative in the task that we really love. Culture and practices. Again, from all of the data we've looked at, sort of top-down strategic shifts that are not well explained take the wind out of everybody's sails and really diminish people's enthusiasm. Time constraints, which are not explained and which shift around. I'm sure you're recognizing a lot of these. Unclear and conflicting feedback. Anyone had conflicting feedback? You've got the PM on one side, you've got your VP on the other side, you've got someone else on another side. What are the structures that we have to put in place, maybe some of the tools that we've been hearing about today, to reduce that from conflict to cooperative resolution? Team dynamics, lack of collaboration, project planning again, and legal approvals. Who likes going through legal approval? We have a lot of this. So is that something that we can offset, something that we can put earlier on, get the legal team involved earlier? That's one of the things I've been looking at. And I have a whole series of talks on burnout, because one of the things I really care about is how all of these things, which are impediments to creative work and impediments to feeling satisfied in your role, really, they lead to burnout. And especially when you have kind of, people who are early in tenure and don't have a lot of experience, more of us experienced folks know how to kind of wiggle around. Fear of failure and self-doubt. It turns out that designers and developers are very creative people who are passionate, very passionate. And the fear of failure, or is it not good enough? Am I not good enough? Really shows up a lot with perfectionism. And overthinking a problem to try and manage all of these constraints. We have heard how constraints can be very good. But if you're too constrained and you're fighting between a VP and two different PMs, product managers, it can be really, really overwhelming. And you can lose inspiration because everything feels like a roadblock. And we've done a lot of work, as I say, on burnout. And the worst thing you can ever get is having a team member burn out. And so the other thing I call to action is, if you see a member of your team, a colleague, and you think they're burning out, please figure out how to support them, because this is a team sport. Anyway, so if that's that's just a summarization of a lot of data over many years in many different contexts. But I just wanted to pull out the highlights that I think we see over and over and over again. And these are not just blockers to creativity. It's also about narrow definitions of innovation, which are technological rather than socio-technical. Because the innovation, as per the invitation earlier, is for us to sort of figure out how we work the system and work the collaborative system in order to create space for co-creation and for individual and collective inspiration. So one of the things I'm thinking about a lot right now, and I'm sure everybody is what are these AI tools that could reduce some of those tedious things? What are the kinds of tools that are coming out that could facilitate communication and collaboration so that we don't hear that one of the major pain points is talking to other people, but that we hear that actually there's a sort of collaboration, coordination thing that was very hard to do before, but is easier now. So these are just some things off the top of my head as I've been thinking about it. So we are in a moment of a paradigm shift. And people are talking about the paradigm shift in terms of the tools we use, these AI tools that we use, which will change our practice. But arguably, these AI tools, more importantly, will change our socio-technical practice and the way we work together and the way we are co-creative and how we imagine space being created so that we have more time to actually do that innovation and inspiration work. So this was just from Ngram Viewer, Google's Ngram Viewer. I was like, ooh, look at that, user experiences there, but look at AI. Hype, 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 hype. It's been going on for a long time, but it's getting more and more, this hype. And it's our job, I believe, to help the world understand what these AI tools are, especially when it comes to productivity and collaboration in our very discipline. So that's why I don't have answers. I have a landscape of things that I know we can work on socio-technically, and I have a fantastic audience here who I think is already starting to think about this. So my time machine is going to be, let's come back and talk about what you learn in the next little while. We've all heard about ChatGPT and Bard. But according to McKinsey and Company, it's like 10,000 plus AI products launched in 2023. How many of those do you think actually are a good idea? Who knows? How many do you think were really effectively tested? Yeah. This is the area I'm interested in, but I think the designer and developer space is where a lot of the hype is happening right now in my world, so I might be missing the point on some other things. So here are just some other ones that I just picked up and have been playing around with. AWS Code Whisperer, Tabnine, ChatGPT and Bard. And then there's these IDE code suggestions plus chat, like GitHub Copilot, Duet AI for developers. And there's going to be more and more and more. And I don't have insight into how much testing has been done on these or how many people are really using them, et cetera, et cetera. But these are the sorts of things I'm keeping my eye on and seeing where the proliferation occurs, but also the adoption. So we've done a bunch of interviews with developers in my team and across other teams. And, the resounding comment is there is going to be a change in development practice and design practice. But one person who's very senior said, it seems like at this point, as they're emerging, they're like excellent interns, maybe. I still have to keep my eye on what's going on. I have to do a lot of prompt design. It had never occurred to me that one might think of an intern as a prompt design machine. But there you go. Prompt learning is really critical. And the general consensus is that they're very good with clear and structured content, but not otherwise. So here are some more little tidbits from interviews. Hey, well, what would you like any of these tools to do? Name your tools. Generate code and tests, fix problems for me. I mean, there's a sort of superpower notion here, which I don't think we're quite there, certainly code generation, but fixing problems. I don't know which problems can you and can't you fix. Save me time, answer these questions and suggest improvements. And in fact, we've been doing a lot of work on documentation summarization in my team, which is going very, very well. Code drafting, assisted code reviews. Remember, everyone said code reviews are hard, but important. Automated testing, resource efficiency, performance refactoring, program management. Can you just figure out who else is working on these things and just have a calendar that makes us come together only if it's a P0 necessary? Otherwise, I don't want to talk to anybody. These are the kinds of scenarios that the developers are coming up with. Do it for me, translate between languages, and again, generate documentation. So I want to show you these just to say there's a huge area or set of task areas that we can start to be creative about, thinking about how the tooling should be designed, could be designed, may be used, and may fail. So here are some of the failures. Hallucinating tasks and generating poor quality code. Hallucinated APIs that do not exist. And parameters. Response to response is unhelpful. And every time I keep doing another prompt in the same area, I get the same response. Not helpful. Lack of ability to explain. Now, explainability has been something around the ethics of AI that we have heard in many domains, but that lack of ability to critically interrogate means that the work might be being done for me, but I don't feel comfortable being super creative in the next leap forward unless I can figure out why. Why did that thing happen? So again, it's a blocker. It's a blocker in many ways to feeling free to be creative, because creativity is around constraint, but it's also around going like, I'm going to do that brainstorming, that thinking in the box and out the box and in the box and out the box, and I'm going to try things out. But if you're monitoring your intern all the time, we need to think about how to get the tools into a better place. So this is Danny's definition of creativity, coming up with new ways to think about things. So I'm just telling you a little bit about how I'm wondering how these AI tools will think about the socio-technical practice changes that are coming down the pike. And we need to go out and experiment and try things out and share with each other the highs and the lows of where things are working. We need to figure out where the data that underlie what we're being recommended are good data or not great data. We need to know which creative tasks can be supported and in what regard, and which really can't. And so innovation is creating ways to solve problems and new ways of thinking about things. And I love these definitions. Thank you, Danny. And so I'm just going to leave you thinking about this as you think about your everyday work. From automated to manual, there's a lot of research on which tasks should be automated, which should be manual, which should be cross-dual initiative. And so I won't go through all of this, but I'm happy to share with anybody afterwards, because this all comes from the human factors literature, and I'm trying to do a distillation here, but it needs us to do experimentation. So I'm going to leave you with, I want more blue for everybody and less tedium. How are we going to find out through data and personal experience and experimentation how to achieve that? And that's my call to action, and I leave you with more AI-generated thingamies. Thank you so much for your time.